I'm going to feel confident saying, we're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Oh no, that puts so much pressure on us.
That's all I'm saying, guys. I think even with it's been really hard to tell, and each week I've kind of wanted to downplay it to whatever extent, because the first match was against DC. No offense, Ian, but they were DC. The second match, huh?
We're getting better, but that first match was pretty.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they kind of still look like last year DC, is what I'll say there. So yeah, we had the first match against DC, and then we had the match against Philadelphia, which we're still trying to feel out how good a team they are this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally we had Seattle, which really played out to a 1-1 draw. If it weren't for the literally the last 3 seconds of the match, we put a goal in. So I'm still not ready to say we're the best team in the league, even though a number of power rankings voting groups were ready to say that. But I think I said, when we beat Philly, I said if we can get through Seattle and Toronto with 4 points, I'm going to be really excited for the year. At this point, especially with Toronto looking like they might be down a little bit.
I think they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
We might be able to get through with. Don't take this away from me, all right? I'm dreaming over here. Might be able to get away with the full 6 there, but we'll see what happens. Because I think we're still trying to feel out our team a little bit too. We're excited about the way we play, but without Steve Clark against Seattle, it could have been a whole different story in that game.
They didn't have Dempsey, of course.
Correct.
So I feel like we keep coming back to this thing where, at what point in the year do we decide where the teams start looking like they're in their form for the rest of the year, right?
Well,
that doesn't make sense, that question.
Just look at who, at the end of the year, has the most points.
No, this is true. But let's say
the exciting thing I'll say for Columbus is not. I mean, we also have the highest goal differential in the league, which I think speaks to a lot of what's going on with the team there, where we're kind of keeping it up on both the defensive and the offensive end.
Mm-hmm.
So that's promising.
Let's take a look at last year, and you say at the same time, this time last year in the 2013 season, if you'd looked, I think Chivas was at 4 wins at the time, and looked like they were going to go all the way, right? But that's not how the season ended up.
And Dallas was in the league lead, and we have to talk about it because they just beat Portland, and Portland is reeling. Because they have 1 point from 4 matches, or is it 2 points? It might be 2 points, but still.
Portland they had 2 draws.
So that's a loss against Colorado and a loss against Dallas, who are teams that are supposed to be new-ish or youngish. They should at least get points from them. And then Colorado turns around and loses to Kansas City, although they probably should have gotten a draw out of that, but maybe we won't talk about that today.
Oh, we can. We'll talk about it. It's SKC. We're not allowed to. We're contractually obligated to talk about them.
Yeah,
you're right about that. I think there's one team. There's one team that we can say confidently is pretty close to who they will be for the rest of the year. Obviously, they'll improve as the year goes along, but RSL. I mean, the first couple of weeks tie San Jose and San Jose, which is that's acceptable. Get a point from LA at home. Go to LA and win. Beat y'all 3-0, and y'all are pretty good in Toronto. RSL, we were worried about. I was specifically worried about them after Jason Kreis, but I think they're gonna be fine. I'll say that with confidence. Everyone else, Philly looks better. We look better. Chicago refuses to be crap. Yet, Kansas City, they're winning games they're supposed to. They're doing what they're supposed to. Dallas is weird, obviously. I mean, there are a lot of weird teams.
Dallas is obviously weird. Yeah, I think we've seen so much. Like I said, in every episode before this, we saw so much change in the offseason that it's really difficult to tell until we see, more than 3 or 4 matchups.
Right.
What teams are trying to do and which teams that'll work against, which teams that won't work against. And the other question is, Columbus is playing their new style. At some point in the year, does the coach just figure it out? We're sending our our defense as far forward as any team ever has in the league, and there's only so much. You can only do that so often before a team figures out how to counterattack on that.
Yeah, and you might see problems with that against someone like Kansas City, who plays high pressure. And if you guys play forward and get caught, Kansas City's going to bury you. I'm not sure you'll see that a whole lot with New York. They're a counterattack team too. They feed it through Cahill and Henry and Dax McCarty. They just go right up the middle. You're obviously not going to see that with DC because they don't know who they are yet. And you guys already beat us by a lot. You're not going to see that with Toronto.
Let me say, I just remembered the Toronto preseason game, and I got really excited for the weekend, guys.
Apparently that happened twice during the preseason, and one of them was just never publicly announced.
So I'm ready to go, is what I'm saying. But yeah, there's a lot of teams that are trying to forge a new identity, or in the case of Real Salt Lake, you question how much of what they're doing is residual from a previous coach, and can the new coach keep the same ball rolling, or will we at some point start to see some turnover and start to see some changes there, for the better or worse? I think there's just so many questions this early in the season.
Yeah, and I feel like I might be wrong about this. I might be hyperbolic, but how many teams have new coaches this year? Vancouver has, you guys have, Montreal does, that's 3. Salt Lake, Chivas, Dallas, Colorado, that's 7. That's a lot.
So let's consider the World Cup break.
Chicago, that's 8.
Because the World Cup break comes around week 10 or 11, when is usually the time teams start to get settled, and that should disrupt. So it's going to be an interesting season because
we're going to have a weird year in general.
Because I don't think MLS has ever been this internationally player stacked. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like this in 2010.
At this point, Columbus, a team who can't even send a player to the All-Star game, is looking at losing a possible 4 players to the World Cup.
Wow.
Mostly on defense. We're looking at 3 Costa Rican internationals. I think one and a half of them are a lock for a spot, and the other 1.5 are fighting for it. And then we have Parkhurst. We'll see how he does tomorrow night, or tonight if we upload this tomorrow.
Oh yeah, it'll be up tomorrow.
So even a team like Columbus, who isn't really like a big name team, is still going to be hurting come World Cup time.
Well, I mean, we've talked about how Columbus doesn't get the recognition, but recognition or not, national team coaches notice good play. So, and most of those guys are new, right? Except for Higuain. Is he going to the World Cup, Higuain, or is he like?
No, Higuain is not going to the World Cup. Yeah, unless you're talking about somebody else with the last name Higuain, then we can talk about it.
Doesn't Spain have an Higuain?
So no, Higuain's brother has played in the past for the Argentina national team, and he may some more.
What if he gets sick and
they need someone with the same last name on the roster because they'll be like, this is still him. So we do have Arrieta, who's on the bubble for the Costa Rican national team. So he's been in and out of the team over the past few years. People think if he has a good showing in the early season, he'll play. And then you're right on the rest of them. Waylon Francis at left back is new, and Gonzalez, our new center back, might also. I think he's a lock for the Costa Rican team.
So there is a little bit of precedent for this. In 1998, there were about 20 or so players, mostly Americans, that went to the World Cup. And then that year was kind of weird in that the best team, DC United, finished second in the overall standings behind LA, mostly because they had like 6 or 7 guys go to the World Cup for America. And then they lost to Chicago, obviously, which was.
But we have limited matches during the World Cup break this time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were limited matches back then too, and DC lost most of them. Back in '98, when they were, the team itself was really good, but
So we might only see, the difference of a match or two without those players.
That can make all the difference at the end of the season, right? I mean, look at Montreal last year, how far they slipped off.
Right.
And as a fan of a team who's doing great in the beginning of the season, I'm all for a late season.
So Dennis, is it more concerning dropping a couple of games because you don't have those players? I guess that's a concern for like you and LA and RSL and Seattle, or is it more of a concern of breaking up chemistry, which isn't a concern for RSL and Seattle and LA, but is for you?
I think both column A and B both are very, very good points. I mean, I don't think I can say one or the other is more. Chemistry is very, very important. So you don't want to break that up. But at the same time, when your good guys go away, at least you can build a kind of a good core, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And once you have the core and the guys come back, that's the true test of what's going to happen, because maybe those guys don't fit into that core. Or maybe they're adaptive and they supplement the core, and you got a really badass team at that point. So it could swing both ways, and I think it's important to consider both options. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting season at the end of the year, because I have a feeling a lot of teams are going to be like, well, if the World Cup break didn't happen, then we would have hit the playoffs. I mean, if it was as close in the East as it was last year, I mean, these couple of weeks might be very important for a lot of teams. But we'll see.
All right, now, as per our contract stipulations, let's talk about SKC Colorado.
I only have one thing to say about this game.
I don't know. I'm reading Clause 5 here, and it says you need 2 things to say about the game.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll make something up. So Colorado has now played 3 games. They've scored 5 goals, all of which are on penalties, which is
interesting.
Insane. Yeah. There was one goal that technically wasn't a penalty goal, but it was a penalty rebound.
Yeah, so yeah.
So I still count it.
So the take home is the way to beat Colorado is to stop it.
I mean,
enough with the funny business in the box.
I mean, we're at the point where the Colorado commentators are making excuses for why penalty goals are legitimate, and they don't have to, because you get rewarded with penalties if you get possession in the box. That just happens, So, but it was just amusing to watch the Colorado broadcast of that game. What was really amusing is they had 2 really, really good chances in the first 10 minutes. An open header that just went over the bar, where Kronberg wasn't even in the area. It was just a guy, and the goal was right in front of them, and then the header went pew, and then
we can't. No one. This is a podcast.
How did that header go again?
No. Made a hand motion as if to say the header over the goal, but in the future, that's what pew means.
Thought it was more of a chew.
Whoosh.
I definitely.
Whoosh.
I definitely meant whatever. And then they had another one, which was even. They had a guy who was right there. It was like he was inside the 6. He was 2 feet away from the goal line, and he kicked it, and it just went right at the SKC defender, because Kronberg was out of the area again. Because I think Kronberg sucks, guys. I think he's bad at goalie keeping.
They have Greenbaum sitting on the bench in SKC, and I just don't get it.
It's because they believe in Kronberg.
Why? Why would you?
Because Matt Beasler said in the run-up to that one CCL game that, well, you don't believe in Kronberg, well, watch him punch shit away. And I'm like, that's cool. I wish he could do other things that goalies are supposed to do, though.
Yeah. He's like an action star more than a goalie.
Yeah. Which is great if you're 1998 MLS, but that's not how it is today.
Also, if your team is playing against Chuck Norris, it's good to have they can punch a lot. It's more about, I don't know. You would think that of all the things a goalie can do, that's the last one you want to do, because you want to, get possession of the ball.
Well, and let's also talk about how SKC's last goalie was a position master in Jimmy Nielsen, and that seems to be the opposite of what Kronberg does. And all of a sudden, you've got a back line which is pretty much intact, adjusting to an entirely different goalie, and I mean, maybe I'm overplaying this, but I don't think so. Anyway, they still won the game,
And
so.
I will also say that, yeah, they're still winning, so we do have to keep that in mind. You're still getting the results.
So yeah. All right. Was that more than 2 things about
That's
SV?
like three to four things.
All
so.
right.
3.75.
Now
Oh,
we
okay.
have on our notes here, we have a bunch of things that Ian wants to talk about. His Ian weekend takeaways. We've talked about a lot of them.
Yeah.
So Ian, I'm going to let you look down through that list and let us know what you want to talk about.
Let's see. I said, okay. We didn't talk about Chivas.
Let's do it then.
Really? I guess we
You're the
can.
one who wrote it. You don't ask me.
Yeah, I did write it. That's true. I also thought I wasn't going to be here, which is why I brought all this stuff.
We're gonna not talk about Chivas because Ian's here. There, I deleted it. Now you can even see it.
Gone.
It was almost hilarious that New York lost at home to Chivas, though.
Just some sort of April Fool's joke you're trying to play with. Hey, everybody, why don't you talk about Chivas for a while?
No.
Okay.
Chivas, I mean, what can you say? Dan Kennedy's good. Mauro Rosales, I don't remember him playing that much against New York. I don't know that he did. But Bocanegra was good, and Dan Kennedy was good.
New York deserved the point that match, though. I mean, if not more
They
than
deserved
that.
3 points from that match.
That's what I wanted to say, but
Yeah.
I pulled back my judgment a little bit. But yeah, they definitely deserved the 3 points. I think Chivas got outclassed almost in every way possible. I mean, they were just
Certainly.
constant shots on target, shots off target that were close. You know, it's crazy.
It reminded me a little bit of that New York DC game at the beginning of last year where it was snowing a little bit, and Bill Hamid kept out about 4 different sure goals, and it was awesome, and we tied them 0-0. That was during the rivalry week, by the way, where all the games were bad.
Oh yeah, I remember that. There's so much marketing towards that week, and it just ended up not being good.
And they never put
This would have been a good week for marketing because this is a week just of full late game stunners. You know, I think there were 4 goals in injury time that affected the outcome of the game.
Yeah.
So
This weekend out of the 9.
I was watching the Seattle Columbus game with a lot of non-soccer fans, and they said, you know, that was as close as they had seen to like a buzzer beater type thing. We were watching we were watching basketball just before, so they said, you know, if that was, they enjoyed that part of soccer. Is all I'll say. They said, you know,
Look,
that's
if-
what it was
That's
all the
your
time.
thing. Just
Right.
watch San Jose every week.
That's right.
Literally every game they've played, I think, there's been a goal in the last, like in the 95th minute, not even 90th plus, 95th minute or something.
That's also good advice if you're really into MMA. Watch San Jose more.
Yes. You know, there are a lot of MMA MLS crossover people.
I do not.
There's like-
First-
Yeah, there's like a couple people